The Zone Coverage Podcast Network.
They may be drinkers, Robin, but they're also human beings.
Hell yeah, let's get Stinko.
Welcome to episode 201 of the Giles and the Goalie podcast. The long-awaited episode 201. I'm just kidding. Nobody waited that long. Well, 10 days? 10-ish days?
Sure.
9 days? Something like that. I am your host / co-host, Giles Farrell. Next to me is Ben Remington.
Hello.
The other co-host of this otherwise fine podcast. Here recording on the worst night of the year for sports. Literally nothing, unless you're a big ESPYs fan.
You know, I'm not.
I didn't peg you for the award show type.
I was just gonna say I kind of literally hate award shows, and even as much sports as I watch, I kind of don't even like the ESPYs, because it's an awards show and I just don't care.
I just usually watch the best speeches the next day on like SportsCenter, but otherwise, yeah, I gave up watching. I used to watch way back when I was a kid, but I got old.
Yeah, I don't know. It's something about the ESPYs where it's like they try to be the Oscars, and I don't know. I feel like it's always been, them trying to be something they're not, and it's been more about the red carpet and more about just like the fame side of sports than the sports side of sports. You know what I mean?
I mean, if you live in Los Angeles and you got to experience that firsthand, that must be pretty cool to see all the sports stars. But otherwise, yeah, maybe do that around the country. Like, all sports have their big games, but it'll never happen because nobody wants to go to anywhere but Los Angeles.
Right.
So,
right in the middle of July,
right? Except me, I want to go other places besides Los Angeles. It's hot.
Yeah,
it's hot there.
Right.
So yeah, we don't have a lot to go on here in this last episode of the season. Not a lot of news came through for the Minnesota Wild since we last recorded. Kind of one of the talking points that I had was, I wrote about this last week, was the Wild should be taking a good, long, hard look at getting Nikita Gusev away from the Vegas Golden Knights, which is a popular idea among the Wild faithful, but apparently not among the people whose job it is to make the Wild better, meaning the front office. But per the Athletic, it looked like you can have Gusev for a pretty reasonable price of a pick and probably a mid-level prospect, right, to get him out of there. Not even a first-round pick. Looking at maybe a second-round pick or something. So I don't get the disdain for not wanting to go get him, especially when you're trying to lure another Russian player over the pond next summer.
Right.
So, do you have any hot takeries on that?
No, I don't know. Nothing outside the ordinary. Where it's just like, yeah, why not try? And maybe, just maybe, it doesn't work out. Like maybe, just maybe, you can't get that trade to happen. You can't work with what Vegas wants. But I would hope that they're at least trying, because as you said, yeah, you do want to build around maybe, possibly, hopefully attracting Kirill Kaprizov to come play for this team. And also, that's just a move that good teams do. I mean, you're taking advantage of Vegas' situation. They're in in kind of a self-imposed salary cap hell, and you got to take advantage of that. Like, go out and get talent, get better if you can.
How many teams poached a good player from the Blackhawks when they were in cap hell, and so on and so on. And this is how you're going to find high-end caliber players outside of the draft, is acquire them when teams are in this bind. And yeah, there's a little bit of a risk for Gusev, who's never played in the NHL, but his point production in the KHL is very similar to Artemi Panarin, who just signed a mega contract with the New York Rangers. So, especially when you're the Wild and you had the worst goal-scoring team from mid-December through the end of the year, why don't you take the chance? Like, you can't get any worse. You literally cannot get any worse than what the Wild were towards the end of the season. They could not score goals, and this is a guy that creates goals, especially when you have brought in some guys who like to shoot shots, giving them a high-caliber playmaker like Gusev to feed them pucks would be very beneficial for the Wild, but I digress. It's probably a pipe dream at this point, but it still begs the question, like, why are you not taking a bigger look at him?
Well, it is that's frustrating, because it's like, what do we want out of the Wild every offseason? Like, the Wild themselves every offseason talk about going to get some offense. You know what I mean? Like, go get some scoring. We need some scoring. We need to find some scoring. We need to, improve our forward lines. And the fans want the Wild to make a splashy kind of move. And splashy moves aren't always right, and they aren't always a good idea. But this is one that probably is. This is a splashy move that I think would be a good idea. And then, if it doesn't work out, whatever, but at least you tried. This is what you need. And it's probably, as you're mentioning, like, it's a lot cheaper asset-wise and even money-wise than going out and trying to sign an Artemi Panarin, or, look how much you just paid for Matt Zuccarello. You need offense, go get it. Like, this guy's just sitting out there. Everyone knows he's going to be moved. Why aren't you thinking outside the box just ever so slightly and making this kind of move?
NHL general managers don't think outside the box. I think we've learned that all too well. Especially the ones from Minnesota. They don't. They just think superstars are just going to somehow magically appear in their lap. But and then the other kind of point I had was Jared Spurgeon. He was the crux of my off-season checklist that's left for Paul Fenton. Number one on the list should be to get him and his contract situation figured out, which there was a piece in The Athletic today that Spurgeon's going to hear out what Paul Fenton has to say, and if it goes well, then he'll probably re-sign here, and then if not, you're probably looking at trading him. But I would certainly hope that the talks go well, because losing a defenseman on the right side of that caliber, even if he fits in with the evolving Wild projection of 5 years and $7 million cap hit per year, that's still a very good deal for Jared Spurgeon, who is just a kind of an unheralded hero on the Wild blue line. It feels weird to say that, but you have Ryan Suter, who's kind of the whipping boy for the defenseman, and then you have Matt Dumba, who's just everyone's darling last year. Last year. Yeah. Very key to say last year.
It took a lot of those people a little too long to get to the point where most of us were, where some of us were at, but they got there.
But yeah, and again, kind of reading it, it doesn't look like they've really started discussions, and so you kind of go, okay, well, what's going on? Did everyone go to the Cottage, which wouldn't be surprising, but why not start? Like, get that out of the way so you can kind of know one way or the other going into the season, like, are you going to be here long term or not? Because then you're going to have to start looking for a favorable trade, because you don't want him to walk away for nothing. That would be a crippling blow to a franchise that's already pretty low on stamina at this point.
Yeah, low on goodwill. Yeah, and so it depends on kind of what Fenton wants to do as far as, do you want to drag this out? Do you want, like you said, do you want to do this in the middle of August instead of retiring to the Cottage as so many NHL front offices do?
I wish I could do that.
Right? It's like, you know what? I'm just gonna not work for a month a year. Yeah, it's just I don't know. It seems that these kind of things do tend to happen in July. Your RFAs, obviously, the whole free agency storm bonanza is done now. You don't have a whole lot of free agent signing. It seems like then they change their priorities to re-signing the RFAs and re-signing the guys that they have under a year. So hopefully that's the case. Hopefully, they're working on that. They did say it was the number one priority. That was something they said right away in the offseason, is that they do want to re-sign Jared Spurgeon. Well, now they just have to actually do it.
Yeah, just do it.
Mm-hmm.
That's a registered trademark of Nike Corporation. Yeah, so that, is really kind of the only talking points that we have, because, once July 1st ended, or, when the Sebastian Aho offer sheet saga ended a day later, we were really without news, so there's really not much else to really talk about Minnesota Wild related. So we can, we can probably dive into our mailbag. We did get a lot of mailbag questions, so that can kind of carry the bulk of this show, and then we'll say our goodbyes for the summer. So let us dive into the patented Giles and the Goalie mailbag. All right, we might try to move through this mailbag quickly because a Chicago Blackhawks Stanley Cup documentary just came on the television, so we'll move it very quickly here, or at least we will. But
I don't think they're not covering that whole second round matchup they had with the Minnesota Wild very much. I wonder why they're not talking about that. Seemed like a big deal to me.
Yeah, it just that was just kind of a flyover. First question from Serious Mashup. I'm gonna miss his questions for a couple months. Is Fenton a bad GM? And then he answers that yes, he is. Okay. Question from Josh: what could you see happening this summer to justify a emergency podcast? Well, I don't think Jared Spurgeon signing an extension would warrant that. I think it would have to be something extremely out of the ordinary, like a major roster trade, involving, like Jason Zucker, for instance, who now has
or Spurgeon for that matter.
Who has a 10-team no trade list now at this juncture. So it would really take some kind of a trade, or if the Wild offer sheet somebody, that maybe could. But I don't see that happening.
Yeah, it's not happening.
That would be really the only scenario in which we would come out of our summer hiatus to do an emergency show.
Yeah, Paul overdosing on crazy pills.
Yeah,
that might do it.
Giles overdosing on alcohol.
No, that doesn't.
No, that just happens on the that's just a regular weekend experience.
We can't.
Let's see, from the podcast account Shut Up Greenlay. It's not wrong. What will this season's goal song be, and will we ever hear it? I think with the thousands of great songs in the world, the Wild could just find one. Well, yes, I would agree, but let me tell you, they're the Wild, and they really love to pander to the fans.
Oh, yeah.
So they're going to do a survey, and then the fans will give their options, and then crowd chant will be selected.
Where I'm going with that, did they say anything about changing the goal song?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, they're not changing it. It's going to be crowd chant until the end of fucking time.
The Wild didn't score enough at the end of the season, so fans forgot what the goal song
actually
was.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's going to be crowd chant because the crowd can go whoa to it, and they love that. And apparently that's a very important part of the game operations experience, is having the crowd be able to mindlessly chant along to your goal song. Because what else do you go to a hockey game for? Not to hear a local artist playing a song that maybe even has some NHL.
Wild.
That's it too. I mean, you go to a local hockey game to get syllables wrong.
Yeah. So there'll be crowd chant again unless the Wild just majorly overhaul game ops, which they reportedly are going to, but I'll believe that when I see it. Next question from Ben Gordon. He just asks if we can hang out. Sure, we're approachable.
Yeah.
Before the children arrive.
Oh yeah,
we'll come back to that.
You've got about 15 minutes on that, I think.
I'm actually worried it's going to happen on the air.
Yeah, there might be a tidal wave coming down our stairs pretty soon here when Roz's water breaks. So, we'll see about that.
But yeah, if you're in town during the season, hit us up. We're approachable. We're friendly. We're not shy.
Yeah, we don't get out much, to be fair.
Yeah.
But you may see us at a local baseball game or, other various places. I don't know what our fair schedule may look like, but perhaps
meet us at the fair.
Yeah, perhaps
it'll just be a low key. We'll just pitch our own tent and.
I'll have a stroller because that's a great idea for the fair. Is bringing a stroller.
I hate you people.
We actually had this discussion, and we can sidebar a second here. So our kid's gonna be born in the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever.
3 minutes.
Yeah, that too. So he's gonna be roughly a month old when the fair rolls around. Roz does definitely very much wants to go to the fair, and I think we could probably figure out to where maybe we could get a babysitter. But we're also fine with bringing the kid too, and I think this is the caveat. So we can bring the kid to the fair, and we probably would use a stroller, but we're only going to do that if we go on a weekday during the day.
Right.
Because I think that's the important distinction to make. If you bring a stroller to Minnesota State Fair on a weeknight even, at night, or especially on the weekend, you are a goddamn monster.
Do not wear open-faced shoes.
Oh, God. And just like, I went there last year on Saturday, literally the busiest day in fair history.
It's terrible.
Yeah, I don't know why people would want to subject themselves and bring your, somewhat young kids, okay, whatever, but like bring an infant to that. What a nightmare. Like, I'll gladly bring our infant to it in a stroller, on Tuesday morning when all the senior citizens are meandering about Machinery Hill.
They're just far away from the places you want to be.
Yeah, and like we'll peruse through the food building that isn't 5,000 degrees with nuts to butts inside. Like that's.
They always have the good cheese curds in there, so you
I
have to
know,
go in there.
yeah.
The problem is you just have to sweat it out.
Oh God, man, that place
is 50 times
sauna.
worse for you. Who just a small breeze will just make you sweat.
Oh yeah, I think about getting hot and I start sweating. It's awful. So yeah, no. We will be at the fair and we will have a stroller, but we're also pretty much going to try to avoid as many humans as possible at the fair, which is tough to do, but that's
what I try to do.
That's what we're going
for.
Yeah.
Avoid humans.
Just don't go on the weekends.
Yeah. From Johnson from Wisconsin, he asks if the Wild decides to trade Spurgeon, which destination is most likely after free agency. And he kind of elaborates on kind of what we talked about. Isn't it kind of confounding that Fenton hasn't really kind of figured that out as of yet? So, I gotta believe there's teams out east that will be in the market for him. I know like Toronto off the top of my head.
That's
like
right. Those I think it too.
They could probably use him. Although I'm trying to look this up on like Cap Friendly to see if they actually will need like a right shot defenseman long term.
Doesn't everybody need a right shot defenseman?
Yeah, they do. So Toronto would be my guess. They would probably throw a lot of money at him.
Mm-hmm.
Montreal has always been like a big player in the market, even though nobody signs with them,
True.
Except restricted free agents.
Yeah.
And like the Islanders, like they came up way short this year, so maybe they could take. Actually, no, I looked at their cap page the other day. That is terrible. the Islanders are in cap hell. Like, they've just got so many players signed to so long-term contracts. It's confounding, really.
I feel like they've got a little bit of like wilditis where they've got players who are good enough to get paid well, but they just have a lot of them that are kind of like that, let's call them like B-plus type players that are good enough to make $6 million a year, let's say. But when you've got a lot of those, that adds up really quickly. Right. And then you end up in the situation where the Wild are, and obviously where the Wild Islanders are, where it's like, oh, now you can't sign anybody.
The Flyers were the other team that I kind of listed as a destination for Spurgeon before the Devils acquired PK Subban. The Devils were also somebody I had maybe pegged to make a move for him, but no, the Philadelphia Flyers and Chuck Fletcher, who picked Jared Spurgeon up off of the scrap heap, would be a good destination, and they will definitely have some cap space to make that acquisition.
And they do have a decent prospect pool too, so that's something to note. I don't think that the Wild are going to be getting Carter Hart or anything like that out of it, but it's an interesting team to look out for just because Chuck does have that history, and I think Chuck very much grew to appreciate Spurgeon after not extending him famously for a little while, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, he is really, really good. We should probably extend him. So Chuck knows.
Another one from Ben Gordon. Will I ever get over Nino being gone? No.
Probably not, no.
I hold nightly vigils for him.
Will you ever get over Eric Halla being gone?
No.
Yeah, see, there you go. Like it.
And now he's another team removed from being here.
Has anyone ever gotten over the North Stars leaving?
No.
No. You're never going to get over being wronged like that. If you feel that you've been wronged like that, like it's still offensive to some people that the Lakers are the Lakers, which kind of makes sense. I kind of get it. So yeah, I think if you don't want to get over it, you never will. If you want to, you probably can, but. Sometimes it's fun to hold a grudge, and I enjoy having beefs with certain public entities that I can't control. So I get it, Just ask that radio station.
Another one from this one comes from Eric. In a hypothetical world where Fenton gets fired after this year, what would entice a prospective GM to want to take the job? Is the GM position just the type of job you have to take when you get a chance, regardless of the situation? I think that depends. I think it depends on the person. Like, if you're a new general manager who hasn't had any experience previously, then yeah, you're probably going to jump at it regardless of whatever situation.
Right.
If you're, a GM who's been to 2-3 teams and has pretty decent success, and you've got teams knocking on your door, then you're probably gonna kind of hold out for a good situation to be in. Mm-hmm. Although if you're after 2 or 3 teams, typically what we've seen in this league is you're kind of done. You're not a GM anymore unless you're just Lou Lamoriello, who everyone seems to have a love for. But yeah, it really depends on kind of the GM. But if you're new, yeah, you jump on it. If you have experience, then you're probably going to wait for the right situation. But the saying is there are only 31 of these positions, so you're probably not going to say no anyway if somebody comes knocking on your door, unless it's an Edmonton situation. Then, well, they have Connor McDavid. I'm sorry, who else is terrible?
Well, but that's what is going to be my point. This is how competitive sports jobs are. This is how hard it is to find a job in sports. The Ottawa Senators have staff.
The answer just appeared on my screen.
The Ottawa Senators have as many people as they would like to hire. They still garner free agents, and they still have like a fully functioning front office. That's how competitive the sports market is. If there was any chance of anybody turning down a job in sports, I mean, if it was that, if it was that easy of a market, if there was plentiful enough jobs and people didn't care about the prestige of being an NHL GM or an NHL anything. I mean, there's people at the Ottawa Senators that are probably not making that much money working in the front office. Like they probably have interns. There's probably people not being paid to work for the goddamn Ottawa Senators. Like that's how competitive that job field is.
Another one from Ben Gordon. So far, what regime is worse in your opinion? Chuck Fletcher or Crazy Pills Paul? I mean, right now, if you look at it after a year, I'm going to look at it in that point of view. If you take it just on a year by year, you look at it from Fletcher's first year to Fenn's first year. And I got to say, pretty similar.
Yeah,
I don't
almost
know,
a dead heat.
Like I think the there's a trade blemish for each of them.
Yeah.
In their first year with the Niederreiter for Rask and then the Nick Leddy trade.
Yeah.
For Chuck Fletcher. So I'll say it's kind of a draw at this point, but we saw Chuck Fletcher's peak. The playoff years where you're getting free agents to sign. So it'll take a few more years before we can really start to judge them as a whole. But I mean, signs kind of point to Fletcher winning that debate anyway. But I could be wrong a year from now if we get asked that question. But it's I don't know. It's a little early.
Yeah, and that's just it. It's early to really judge Fenton. Fletcher, you can really kind of close the book on his tenure and kind of, I don't know. you can be harsh with him, and you can also, be complimentary of Fletcher, I think. You can say, hey, look at this guy effed up this and effed up that and blah, blah, blah. Or you can say, hey, this guy made the playoffs 6 years in a row. You can go either way. It's a choose your own adventure kind of thing. And Fenton, I think, we're still way too early to even really kind of decide what and him too. I mean, his big thing is the draft, and it's going to really largely rest on what happens with Matt Boldy and to a lesser extent Philip Johansson.
Yeah, we've really liked his draft picks so far out of that first one.
Yeah, and so and you got guys like Connor Dewar and players like that where it's like the book isn't nearly shut on his time here. Obviously, those drafts still have a little ways to go to even bear some fruit. So I don't know. The first year is pretty rough for both of them. So it's from there it's like I don't know. It really is going to be the ultimate test is if Fenton, and I said this when he was hired, he's going to be compared to Chuck Fletcher, and that's just kind of, and also Fletcher's legacy kind of will compare to Fenton, because if Fenton screws it up really bad, Fletcher looks better by comparison, and kind of vice versa. So it's really going to take some time.
Then the last question comes from Mo, not of the Flaming Mo's,
no,
but he asks, what would Fenton have to do this season for you to think, 1, he is a genius, 2, he is a stupid idiot? Man, I mean, for him to look like a genius, the following things have to happen. Number 1, Victor Rask has to have a second coming that mirrors like Eric Stahl 3 years ago, which has a very, very low probability. I would actually probably take my odds on the Timberwolves as is winning the NBA championship over Victor Rask having that second coming. And then Kevin Fiala and Ryan Donato have to turn into very productive offensive players to fill the roles of the players that they were brought in for.
Right.
If those happen and then you have Matt Zuccarello putting up, 40, 50 points, then, hey, maybe this guy knows what he's doing. But number 2, I mean, things just kind of go the way they went at the end of last season. The Wild still can't score. The players Fenton trusted in or traded for, they never lived up to par. And then Victor Rask is just a healthy scratch 2 out of 3 games a year, which seems to be the more likely route. So that's really what if I have to pick, option 2 probably more likely, but you never know. And there's a lot that can happen, especially in this wacky division. So,
yeah, I'm with you on those things. I think as far as genius, I think even having those players reach their potential probably isn't good enough to earn any kind of genius designation. It's like, okay, well, these players that were supposed to be good turned out to be good. Yay. Genius would be more like if he can finagle some kind of brilliant trade. If he can be on the other end of a good one-for-one trade, if he can get the Taylor Hall for Adam Larson, the good end of that kind of trade, like that's how you get the genius designation. I feel like. As for him being an idiot, I don't want to. I've been very critical of him, and I don't want to go, even further down that wormhole. But it's just like, if things keep going the way they're going,
right, and
he's working his way there.
It's more favorable to number 2 happening because we really don't seem to know what the plan is for this team. So that's kind of a red flag already. So yeah.
And it's hard to be successful. It's hard to make things work exactly how you want them to, and
it's hard to be successful when you don't, draft well.
Yeah, that's a big one, but I think if he makes another trade, if we see him try to deal Jason Zucker yet again, I mean, I think that you can get out the stupid idiot branding iron and hit him in the forehead with it. Or if something goes horribly wrong with this Jared Spurgeon situation, I think that kind of saddling him with a bad label is probably fair at that point too.
Yeah. So that was the mailbag. Thank you to everyone for pitching in with your questions. Much appreciated. And yeah, that we can probably just call it a show unless you had any other hockey-related topics. I don't really think we have any. Everyone, since we really last recorded, even league-wide, there really hasn't been a lot of news. Some minor trades, but nothing too big to write home about. So yeah, that was the 5th season of the Giles and the Goalie podcast. Hopefully you enjoyed it as much as we did. We certainly do have a good time doing these podcasts. Hard to believe that was episode 201.
Yeah.
I think I said that last week. Hard to believe we're at episode 200 and we're at 201. And
yeah. And we really appreciate all the people that, with all the congratulations and all that. Like it was a big deal hitting 200. I think that's not something small, and it's wild to even think about the fact that we've gotten to this point and the fact that we've gone on for 5 seasons. Like that's just crazy in of itself. So we really appreciate, the people that have reached out and said wonderful things about our show, and it's been a labor of love, obviously, for a long time, and it's been rewarding at the same time too.
Yeah, what he said. We're gonna take our summer hiatus now. Ben is gonna go have a child here in a matter of moments.
Right.
I'm kidding.
Any day now.
Probably, matter of days.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yep.
So that's something to look forward to, and then I'll just be off doing my usual, typical things on the weekends with your beverages and whatnot.
Beanbags.
Actually, it'll be probably be a little more laid back, trying to be a little more low key this summer. Because I am planning a wedding, so
right.
I have to, eventually I have to pay for that. So some things in the budget had to be slashed. So look, there's the Wild.
Oh, there it is.
But yeah, so we'll be a little bit more low key. I'll be writing that zone coverage still kind of sporadically throughout the summer, and then once training camp hits, I'll get back into the swing of things. So can look forward to that. Yeah, any final thoughts?
Well, I think it's probably only fair that we tell people that there's a possibility that
you're gonna go there.
Well, yeah, I think there's a possibility that things aren't the same next season. If there is a next season, I'm not going to say that we're done or we've decided things. We really haven't at all. But I think it's worth. I think our fans are good to know that show may be different next year. Show may may or may not be around. May or may not be the same people. May or may not be this. Yeah, we don't know.
We have some balls in the air here.
Yeah, I don't want people to automatically assume that it's 100% that we'll be back with this exact same show and this exact same kind of format and this exact same people and all that. Just throwing it out there. I don't want it to be a surprise that completely shocks people. Because I am really appreciative of our loyal fans and if we do make any kind of change. It's going to be something that hopefully is better for the fans and better for us, and we'll see how that plays out. But push comes to shove, we really appreciate all the love that we've gotten, and I mentioned it briefly last week, but just the fact that we have fans is wild. It's just crazy.
Hey.
I'm not trying to be cute with that, but it's just so weird to me that people are fans of us, and I really can't speak enough about how much we appreciate that, how much we really do not take that for granted. So thanks again to everybody. I mean, 200 episodes is a hell of a run.
Considering this team we talked about.
No kidding, right?
Oh, look, there's Thomas Vanek not skating.
There's the Blackhawks beating the Wild in the playoffs. Wow.
Yeah, clean sweep.
Yep. Just kind of throwing that out there. It's not anything, anything set in stone at all, but I just want people to be aware. It's a possibility.
Yeah, so we're gonna think about that this summer while we're off doing our things, and then maybe be back, maybe not. We'll see.
Yeah.
Should I just edit in cliffhanger music here?
Yeah, dude. Something. Who shot Mr. Burns? Can we get an excerpt from that episode? Maybe we could probably do that.
Do you? Yeah, something like that. Oh God. All right, that's it for this show. iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, iHeartRadio, YouTube, blah blah blah. You know all that.
Uh-huh.
Ben is at Ben Remington on Twitter, at Giles Farrell on Twitter, at GATG Wild Podcast. We'll still tweet from there in the summer with our witty jokes or unwitty jokes, depending on how you want to look at it. But we'll still be there. Zone Coverage MN on Twitter. Zonecoverage.com/subscribe if you love the work we've done.
Mm-hmm.
If you have any input on the show for next year, want to see us come back, drop us a line. It never hurts to tell the people you listen to that you like this stuff or support their work or whatnot. So
right.
There you go. That's going to do it for us, and we will maybe see you next year.
Later.
Well, I couldn't possibly solve this mystery. Can you?
It's not resiliency. You're making it sound like we're good. That's all. I'm done.
Mike, yo, still sucks.